I had to make peace with a few labels. The first label was selfish. The second label was ungrateful. The third label was like completely lost, completely broken, black sheep. Like I basic or the villain. I was the villain in the whole story. I was a traitor to my belief system and all of that. So I had to make peace with all of these labels, and it was extremely painful. So it's just like very often we spend a lot of time battling the ways people are looking at us, and we're like, no, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. I'm just like, I was at a place where I was like, fine, if you're gonna look at me that way, that's all right. I'm gonna take the space I need, and I have accepted that this is what I choose to do. It's okay if we don't see things the same way. We spent 2 years without even calling for birthdays. That's what happened in the facts.
Yeah.
And I missed weddings literally.
Yep.
Where I wasn't welcome. That was the reality of it for me, and it was extremely painful, extremely excruciating. At some point in time, I tried the journey of like bypassing it, meaning just focusing on the love and light and not trying to feel what was inside my body. I tried that, it didn't work. And at some point I was just like, I can't keep going that way. It's not working. It's like I was feeling everything in my body tensing, and my body was like, bro, you got to dive in here and really work with what is in here.
People that cause you to feel as if you have to walk on eggshells are gatekeepers of your power. They are unconsciously inviting you to let your voice be heard with more assertiveness or to define stronger boundaries.
Ooh.
That quote is from the young and enlightened guru, philosopher, thinker, healer, Xavier Dagba, who's on our show today. I'll tell you a little bit more about Xavier. He's a trauma-informed transformational life coach, shadow work facilitator, and intuitive healer who likes to think of himself as an emotional alchemist, a beautiful, wise, and evolved soul. Xavier encourages us to lead from our heart, not our wounds. We discovered Xavier on Instagram, where his following is far too modest, considering how truly profound, advanced, and helpful his teachings are. Destined to become one of the great philosophers and healers of our century. Better together in the Heal Squad. Please give a warm welcome to Xavier Dagba. Hello, my friend.
I'm having shivers over here. I'm like, who's this guy talking about? Because I'm just going on social and sharing what resonates with me and what has resonated with me. So it's validating tremendously to see that it's resonating with you guys as well. So I'm just it's just a deep honor to be here for me, and hopefully what comes out of this conversation can shift to one or two people out there. That's all I can hope
right?
for.
Yeah, and I know it's going to shift me. It already does by Kelsey's the one who and her mom were following you, and then they turned me on to you. And in your, God, I feel like we have to get a little bit into where you came from before we get into your teachings.
Yeah.
Because your family, it's an age-old story that I've lived, that my wife who hosts the show has lived, where your parents had one thing for you to do, that they wanted you to be an economist or probably something white collar or in business, and you choose not to do that. And tell us what happens.
So basically, I sold them into that vision. They wanted me to be a mathematics teacher before, and I got the degree, and I was like, no, there's more for me. Economics is it. And they believed. They were like, okay, you want to do this, we support you. You get the scholarship, everything is paid. You get to go to Canada to do this thing. We support you. So I sold them into that vision. And then I came in here like 1 year into the program, 2 years into the program. Grades are not really an issue, but the life that I'm seeing for myself on the other end, it's like, it's not appealing. Spending 12 hours researching, reading stuff, and stuff that are, intrinsically not really aligning with me anymore, that I'm going to be teaching. And I'm just like, I cannot do that. I want to help people, but I want to do that in a way that is really going to shift them, empower them, and not just like having these big institutions that are going to define how people should behave and what they should do in order to feel empowered, at least from the financial standpoint. So I was like, I'm going to drop out. And I didn't tell my parents for a year and a half. So they find out a year and a half in. I was sure they would have stopped me. They would have guilt, tripped me into continuing the journey. So I didn't tell them and I dropped out. So when they find out, there was like the disowning messages because I come from a very Christian Catholic family, disowning messages, and it was just heartbreaking. Um, it uncovered so much more. I never knew was there. Just like what I can see clearly, abandonment wounds. I didn't even have the language for all of that. So it uncovered all of this pain, and I was isolated and alone, and it brought me in a deep depression for so many years. And the thing is, at that time, I was so broke that I couldn't afford professional help to work through the depression and all of that. So I was reading everything I could and trying to apply that on myself. So that was my initiation. I was reading, taking, few $100 trainings here and there, learning a modality and being like, okay, I'm going to be my own healer. I'm going to practice on myself. I'm going to apply this on myself. So that was my journey for a little while, like trying to learn as much as I could, practicing it on myself. And then I was like, okay, let's see what I can offer to the world. Let's see what I can do with everything that I'm learning. And first, I was like, okay, I'm going to help people with their nutrition and fitness. That's what I thought I was meant to do. We even had a gym in Montreal, and I was like, I am just helping people at the surface level. I can see there is so much more because I had been through that path. I was like, well, this person is clearly having the same kind of thing that I was having. It's an emotional issue. It's not just an eating issue. It's not just like a lifestyle diet issue. There is more in there. And on the side, I started just like coaching them, be like, how about you do this? How about you do this? How about there is this new thing, this like EFT thing. How about you just practice that? I know it's a little weird. How about you do that? And let me know how you feel. Because I'm seeing that your eating stuff has way more to do with what is going on between, this relationship that you have or the anger, resentment that you have here about your partner, mom, or whatever. So I was seeing this connection and I was like, okay, how about you try this? And then we're going to shift and adapt your nutrition or your fitness or whatever. So at some point in time, I was like, I am just playing hide and seek with what I feel like is my true calling here. And at the very moment where we got pregnant with my first son, that was early 2018, I was like, I'm not going to be the example of a dad that is toying with his purpose, that is just, refusing to dive in all in. And I just decided to drop everything and give it a fair shot. So that was early 2018. And, since then I've been doing the work and here we are.
And your parents, and again, this is familiar to myself and my wife, they eventually, of course, come around.
Yes.
But not a full without a full understanding of what it is you do. And again, I understand that, and as my wife does too.
Yeah, they have no idea about the work I'm doing till this day. They don't understand it, and they don't even want to. We've had some sort of reconciliation, and I've had even my dad send me a message being like, I never understood how to really work with the sensitivities of 6 children. So if I did anything to hurt you, I deeply apologize. And that brought me on my knees, just like that recognition. Like out of the blue, I'm receiving that message and I'm on WhatsApp reading it in the metro in Montreal. I just start crying.
Yeah.
So I received that message and that was like a circle, it was like a full circle moment for me. And he still doesn't understand the spiritual stuff that I dive into. He still doesn't understand most of what I'm doing. And he was just like, if this is what you like, if you are able to pay your bills and if you're able to live decently.
But there's a victory. But there's a victory in and I don't even know if it's the word victory, but there's there's movement in the fact that he acknowledged, because I can already
Yes.
feel who he is. And for
Yeah.
that man from that generation, from that
Yeah.
culture to say, I had 6 kids and I didn't, it was too much. And that admission was a giant step for him. And that's why
Yeah.
it brought out that emotion in you. Are you of the belief that sometimes when we do the work for them? Like, do you think there's a connection between the work you did on yourself and him having that giant step to say that?
100% yes. 100% yes, because there is what psychologists call internal family systems, and there is also what spiritual people would say constellations, in energetic constellations in a family, which is the energy of one affects the energy of all the rest. Like we are in this collective experience where we decided to come together as a soul group, and we are sharing that. This is spiritual people, like people who work with constellation would tell you, you are sharing this collective soul group together, and when the energy shifts in one person, it is affecting the energy of all the people in the family. It's disrupting that dynamics. So in my experience, the work that I did a lot with my dad was releasing anger and resentment, because he was so deep. My dad was the he was and my dad is I come from a lineage of family man. My dad has always provided, has always been there, sometimes a little bit too strict with protection. We grew up in a neighborhood that was extremely dangerous, literally. And he was like, past this hour, no one goes out. And I had that rebellious soul. When I started going to college, I was like, man, I am an adult now. I want to go out with I felt constricted by my dad a lot. And at some point, he also had, fallouts with my mom, and, you know, relationship issues that tarnished the beautiful image that I had of him as a young child. So there was like there was deep anger, resentment in there that I had to work to release, because I had this image of an amazing man. And when one day my mom came to us bursting in tears, telling us that my dad had some sort of affair and that we had a sibling that we didn't know about, we got broken in that moment. So that image of the man got, shattered. And there was deep anger, deep resentment. And I worked through that. And when I released that, it was almost a matter of weeks or days. It was a matter of weeks or days. And I received that message from him. Wow. So for me, it has been my experience. There is definitely a relationship there. There is a deep correlation there. That has been my experience.
Yeah. And so it can work the other way, where you have the one negative force in a family system. And I see a lot of these merry-go-rounds, right? You're not in any system, by the way. It could be a work family, a friendship group, where everyone's on that dysfunctional merry-go-round, just going in a circle, because there's the one person that is, but you can be the one to step off the ride.
Yes.
But it is painful. It's
Absolutely.
loneliness.
Yeah.
But in the end, you're going to get rewarded. And more than likely, I think the bonus ball is that all those people that you did love, they're going to heal too, because of your courage and strength to step off the ride.
Absolutely. And this is what showed up in my whole journey. My family, to a certain degree, they haven't changed much. Let's say they still have the same beliefs that they had, but they've been able to meet me kind of halfway. Like, we understand that you are interested and invested in this new lifestyle. And, it doesn't keep us from loving you. It doesn't keep you from loving us as much, as long as we maintain a certain degree of respect, a certain degree of decency. And this is what I've noticed is, like, they are still the same people. They go to church every day. They pray every night. Same things. They have the same beliefs. But my dad is able to look at me and be like, I respect that you're doing this. And he's like, I don't need to understand. Please don't explain to me all the details of that because I know you're gonna you're gonna
He's
start
not ready.
attacking my
Yeah,
beliefs.
he's not
Like
ready. Yeah.
he's like, I am clearly not ready. And I respect that.
Wow.
I respect that.
And you must, I know you're going to affirm what I'm about to say to you, but I think it's important for people to hear. Once again, you end up going on this journey, having all of these amazing life breakthroughs, now becoming who you are. But none of it happens without the pain and suffering you dealt with growing up, the pain of leaving the family, right? The journey to Canada, having the courage to say, no, I'm going to do what's in my heart, and the strength to love yourself enough to say, I come first and I love you, family, but if I have to lose your love to live my purpose, I'm willing to do that. And then all the pain that went along with it. But then, as you were saying, all the breakthroughs that came from you, like you didn't realize you had abandonment issues. You didn't realize. So can you speak to the fact that all of these things that happen are in fact a gift, no matter how painful they feel?
Yes, absolutely. It's like what you pointed out beautifully is that I had to make peace with a few labels. The first label was selfish. The second label was ungrateful. The third label was like completely lost, completely broken, black sheep. Like I basic or the villain. I was the villain in the whole story. I was a traitor to my belief system and all of that. So I had to make peace with all of these labels, and it was extremely painful. So it's just like very often we spend a lot of time battling the ways people are looking at us, and we're like, no, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. I'm just like, I was at a place where I was like, fine, if you're gonna look at me that way, that's all right. I'm gonna take the space I need. And I have accepted that this is what I choose to do. It's okay if we don't see things the same way. We spent 2 years without even calling for birthdays. That's what happened in the facts.
Yeah.
And I missed weddings literally
Yep.
where I wasn't welcome. That was the reality of it for me, and it was extremely painful, extremely excruciating. At some point in time, I tried the journey of like bypassing it, meaning just focusing on the love and light and not trying to feel what was inside my body. I tried that, it didn't work. And at some point, I was just like, I can't keep going that way. It's not working. It's like I was feeling everything in my body tensing, and my body was like, bro, you got to dive in here and really work with what is in here.
And so when we talk about working with it, it's acknowledging it, right? It's
That's
coming
the
to
first step.
right, coming to that understanding. And then what can we do? Because the first thing is, you're right, we're angry and all those other things.
Yes.
So how do we reduce that or come to terms with it the way you did?
So the first thing that I did is you mentioned acknowledging all of that, surrendering to all of that as well. And remember, I was doing this all on my own, and it doesn't need to be the journey of people that are going through that. There are so many practitioners out there that can hold space for you as you're processing all these dense emotions. I don't see any emotion as negative. I see them as heavy, light, dense, but I don't see any emotion, even shame and anger or like grief. I don't see any emotion as negative. They are only ever informing us, and the body is only ever willing to process the emotions. But we have that weird and beautiful ability. We can suppress our capacity to feel, and that's what I was doing for a long time. We can really try to
Yes.
suppress the emotions. I'm going to give you an example. When your body you get a cut on the body, that pain, if your body is working well, that pain is something that you don't have control over. You feel it immediately. You feel it immediately, and it is a signal to the white cells of your body to go where there is the cut, there is the inflammation, and to begin to work to heal that part of you. Now, if you look at the emotional body as another system, The dense emotions are signaling to you that, okay, there is something here, there is a perception that is not really fully aligned with your highest expression of self, a perception. Because in my experience, emotion, feelings are very often responding to a perception. Like, I was seeing myself as abandoned. I was seeing myself as unloved. I was seeing myself as betrayed. I was seeing myself as rejected. And because of it, I was feeling anger. I was feeling rage. I was feeling sadness. I was feeling grief because of that perception that was anchored. So, very often, when we suppress emotionally, we are not giving permission to what I want to call the soul to do the work of emotional healing. We often think we are the healers. We often, and even practitioners, we often think that the practitioner is the one doing the healing. The practitioner is holding the space so that you surrender to being in the presence of an emotion. And when you allow yourself to surrender, the same way you're not able to block the pain in your body, the white cells are signaled, okay, I need to go there and fix this thing. When you do that emotionally, what I often like to say is the light of the soul works through you to shift the emotional temperature. So, way people giving that permission to actually be present with the emotion, it's as if you are meditating, but instead of a thought, you are working with an emotional state. You are the witness of the emotion. You are the witness of what is going on within you. We often feel like emotions are going to destroy us, but they are going to process us. So, giving yourself permission to be the witness of the emotional work and just perceiving it and really accepting what is going on there without identifying with the emotion, without identifying with the weather, without creating the identification. I am anger. I am experiencing anger. Anger is here. I am feeling anger. I am not anger. I am this space where anger is showing up and it's actually signaling something to me, but it's actually willing to be witnessed. There are so many practices that I used back then and that I still use sometimes. Emotional freedom technique or tapping is one of them. I learned it. I was doing it on my own, and this is something that helped me tremendously release the anger. And this is something that so many practitioners there and even people can learn that. They can go and just look up on the internet. Emotional freedom technique. What does that look like? There are small even on YouTube, people can find things. And I'm not saying people should self-diagnose or dwell all things like that necessarily, but that was my journey.
Yeah,
I
no.
was at that place where I didn't have the support and the help that I needed. So everything I can put my hand on that was
Yes.
resonating, I was like, I'm gonna give it a try.
I
I'm
think it's
gonna do it.
important because most people don't have the money or the resources. So you got to try
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
And hopefully that leads you to a better place and more means, and then you can get more advanced.
Yeah.
When you talk about perception, can we go back to that? Because I, how do we get an accurate perception? Because, right, sometimes you have a false perception of
Yes.
things, right? And I think that will take you down a really bad rabbit hole, or maybe not. I don't know.
What has come on and on and on for me is very often when there is emotional pain, there is a perception that is not aligned with, if I'm going to put this in a spiritual framework, it's like we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. All spiritual beings having this human experience, meaning the energy or vibration of spirit is like love, is joy, it is, everything that is extremely elevated. It's that extremely high vibration. And whenever we are feeling separate from that, is because we are hosting perspectives that are not in alignment with that perspective of spirit, meaning I am hosting in this moment beliefs, thoughts that cause me, like spirit gives me feedback through emotion. It's like emotions are really, when you look at things that way, some sort of navigation system. I am abandoned. I feel pain. Spirit is telling you, not quite true. It feels like it, yes, but not quite ultimately true. I am rejected. I feel sorrow. I feel grief. I feel sadness, which is the signal from spirit. Yes, it feels like it, but it is not quite true. It is very separated from the highest expression of who you are. Does it mean that you get to bypass how you're feeling? No. It means that you really give yourself permission to be a true friend to yourself. Because very often what we do is we are only willing to be present with ourselves. With ourselves. We are only willing to be present when we're happy. We are only willing to be present when we are joyful, when things are going well. And this is the reason why people are taking drugs. This is the reason why people are trying to numb. This is the reason why people are not willing to feel the pain, because unconsciously we do not want to be present with ourselves when we feel like shit. I'm sorry for my French
It's
here.
okay.
So when we give permission to ourselves to actually become aware and become present of an emotion, and to ask ourselves, what is the story that I created around this emotion? What is the story that is feeding how I'm feeling right now? What is the story that is at the origin of how I'm feeling right now? And whenever you feel sorrow or guilt or pain, you are at a place where that story doesn't match the truth of who you are. Now, is
So
that story accurate? When I say is that story accurate, what does it mean? Is it a fact? Let's say in my experience, was it a fact that my parents rejected me? Yes, that is a fact. That is a fact. That
mhm.
is my experience. It doesn't negate that. Is that painful? Yes. Hell yes. I can be with that. I can accept the condition, but I can also perceive that there is way more to it. There is way more to it. There is a disconnection from from the highest elevated perspective that I am. I am identifying too much with the only the human, and I am disconnected too much from my most from my spiritual perspective. I'm not sure if this kind of helps,
No, it
but
does. It does. So, and like, let's stay with your story.
mhm,
So, my parents rejected me. That's a fact. So I'm in a lot
yes,
of pain about that, and I feel abandoned. And that on the human level, but then
yes.
on the spiritual level, what what was the truth?
On the spiritual level, the truth was there is appropriateness in what is happening right now. There is appropriateness in what is happening right now. Very often that sounds like it. Very often that higher spiritual truth is there is appropriateness in what is happening right now. It doesn't mean that they are necessarily evil. It doesn't mean that they are broken beings. It just means that they are at a place where they cannot truly see what I need, and that's okay. It has never fully been their job to fully validate me. I gave them that responsibility as a child. It has never been fully their job in adulthood. It has never been fully their job to validate my choices. I gave that to them. It has never been fully their job to actually see me for the fullest expression of who I am. It has never been their job. I put that into their hands. So there is a deep aspect which is very, very hard. And when we are identifying with the wounded, we are projecting responsibility. When we are identifying with our power, we are reclaiming responsibility. Meaning, when we are in pain, and this is the reason why so many people will happen to feel dissonance here, they will be like, yes, they did this to me. Yes, this is their fault.
Hmm.
Yes, and yes, and yes. And I often tell to people, you are absolutely right. There is no part of me that wants to discredit what is happening here. This is what happened, and this is how it felt. And at a certain point, when you are willing to shift, it takes to reclaim that perspective of like, what is that ultimate truth here that will make me feel a little bit more expansive in my body? And very often it means reclaiming responsibility. It means reclaiming responsibility. I gave them, consciously or subconsciously, the power to validate me. And when they didn't, I felt pain. I gave them, consciously or subconsciously, the power to basically decide if what I was doing was right or wrong. And when they didn't, I was hurting. And those things, when we put them in people, when we put our integrity in other people's hands, whether we love them or not, when we put our sovereignty in other people's hands, when we put our validation in other people's hands, when we put responsibility in other people's hands, we suffer. So that has been my experience of just reclaiming all of that.
And that's a big one because on so many levels, because it goes back to something you said earlier about labels and, other people us giving the power away to let other people label us.
Yeah.
When, my goodness, and we all do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm processing all of this. God, we should talk. I mean, I have all these topics I want to go over with you. My goodness. This is something I'm seeing a lot. Well, this probably leads into the victim mindset too.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 or 4 other major topics that I see going on right now that are epidemic.
Yeah.
Talk about the victim mindset, because this is very similar to what you're saying here. The victim is giving the power away.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's very, very loud right now in the field because, I have to just say it as I see it, which is there is a lot of like collective trauma that is happening. A lot of collective trauma that is happening. And it can first, the trauma of being told, that you must stay in your house for let's say a whole year or more.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if you are back in childhood and your parents are grounding you and you cannot do anything against it. Like we are seeing grown adults being told you can't leave your house, being told you can't open your business, being told, and it really doesn't matter how people perceive this whole situation. But when you are looking at that from a trauma-informed perspective, so many people are brought back to their childhood where there is an authority that is telling them you can do this and you cannot do this. This is right, this is wrong. You put your mask, it's right. You don't put your mask, you're evil. You do this, it's right. You don't do this, you are evil. So there is a lot of that is happening. And people are literally brought to their infancy, to their childhood. And they are like, holy cow, what is going on here? So there is a lot of collective trauma that is happening. Now, people can debate all day long about the validity of all these measures, and that's not really the point where I would like to go. It's just, I see so many people that are brought back that their wounds are open wide again. Their wounds are just open again. And so many people do not understand what is actually going on because they are not seeing that from the perspective of, from a trauma-informed perspective. Like so many are being brought back to childhood. And you will see that the people that feel the most stable in the whole situation are usually those who have done already a lot of work on themselves. But those that feel very disrupted by it are very often brought back to that place where we are just at the mercy of something else, of another entity, meaning government, officials, authorities, and they are just telling us basically telling you who you are, telling you what you're allowed to do. So it brings up that victim mentality. It really anchors that deeply. And you see a lot of people going out and really acting from that place. And very often, unconsciously, they are acting from that place, meaning I don't have power. My power is not within me. My power is in the hands of an authority, someone else. My power is even in your hands. If you do not do this, then you are attacking my safety. If you do not, if you do not put your mask on, if you do not, abide by this new rule that we have in a society, because this is the narrative. And I'm not here to criticize the narrative. I'm here to analyze what is going on. So very often people start when I approach the dynamics of what is going on collectively here, people might happen to be triggered. But when you look just from a trauma-informed perspective, the narrative is if someone doesn't do something, he is directly attacking your own safety. So you are his victim. So there is that narrative that is really, really strong right now that is anchoring on safety. And so many people have been walking for a whole year like stress balls. So in some sort of paranoia state, which means it is extremely loud in this moment. And unfortunately, that's what I've been seeing. And it takes what it does in my experience, though, it brings people at that place of reclamation of sovereignty. It invites you to go at a place where, in order to make peace with what is going on collectively right now, you either need to anchor yourself more powerfully in, I am a sovereign person, meaning my freedom or my ability to make choices for myself. I'm invited to redefine it in a way that is more powerfully aligned with my, let's say, spiritual nature, or you're going to see so many other people that are going to repress themselves a little bit more, feeling like the world is just an extreme and safe place, and it feels this way for so many people at the moment. My prediction is because of the way all the things have been unfolding last year, we're going to see more and more people, or we're going to see so many people, even when all the measures of restriction that we have right now go away. They will be in such a traumatized place that they will choose to stay isolated for the rest of their lives. This is what I feel.
Well, in our country, I will tell you, when I was a little boy, there were older people who had closets full of canned food, like too much. And for back then, it was not a Costco universe where you had bulk items. And I just remember, and my mother would say, well, you see, they went through the Depression where they had no food.
Yes.
So they always have more. I know a lot of Holocaust survivors who had a government come in and take everything they owned away from them and kill them. And the few that survived were like, that's never going to happen again. So I'm going to have money in mattresses, cookie jars, other country, and amassing millions and millions and millions of dollars. And yet it's not enough because they're so scared they're going to lose it all again. And they think there's been studies, and I don't know enough about this, but that it's even now in the DNA. So even with the Holocaust survivors of relatives of today, the descendants of American slaves have so much trauma in their DNA.
Absolutely.
And you see the reactions. And yes, I believe you are. We've seen this before. People, oh, that's just tragic. Isolated the rest of your life. Oh my God, people do the work. Please listen to this man. Oh my God, like that's hard. Isolated the rest of your life.
It is really tremendous what is happening, because if you look at what is really going on from a trauma informed perspective, you're seeing that anxiety is through the roof. You're seeing that stress is through the roof. You're seeing that suicide rates are through the roof. So we are in this place where it is not a luxury to actually dive and do the emotional work. It has become survival.
It's a necessity. And also we need to evolve too.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
There's two things that come to mind here, and I thank you for these breakthroughs for me, myself personally.
You're
But I
welcome.
realize when I have these moments as someone from my generation who's down on the younger generation, as is traditional, I
Yeah.
realize much of it is coming from a trauma-informed perspective.
Yes.
It's the child in me who's
Yeah.
like, wait, why do they get iPhones at the age of 5? Why do they get everything their way? I didn't get that. So
Yes.
I'm angry.
Yes.
And now,
Absolutely.
it's coming from that place, which is amazing. And I feel like Gabby Bernstein's a friend of ours, and I want to, you and I are going to do some work because there's work I want to do with you for your career, because your message is amazing and we need to get you out there in a big way. And I promise you we will. I've said this many times and
I
I've never been
appreciate
wrong.
you.
So, as long as the
Thank you.
person wants to go along for the ride, I'll get you there. I promise. And the world needs us. But Gabby Bernstein has a book called Judgment Detox.
Yes.
So we all move to judgment based on these trauma-informed perspectives. So I think Kelsey has that here probably in our list, right? Is just we're all so judgmental.
Yes.
And it's it is based on these traumas you're talking about from growing up and even probably later in life. But can you talk
Yes.
about the dangers of being judgmental or whatever you would have to say about it?
Like, honestly, judgment is really a beautiful, and I'm sorry when I say beautiful, I'm not saying that it's something that is nice to have, but it's just a fascinating is the word, fascinating thing to analyze. And I've read the book of Gabby Bernstein, and I really love her work. And something that I've seen in my own experience, it is this key distinction that has worked for me and usually works for other people. It is being non-judgmental doesn't mean not having judgments, because the simple fact that you have a mind invites you to a place of having opinions, and based on opinions, judgments are created, preferences are created. So being non-judgmental doesn't mean that you don't have any judgments, because I see a lot of people shaming themselves for having judgments, for just having opinions, for having preferences, and they think they shouldn't. And here's the key point. Being non-judgmental in my experience means not taking action from your judgments. It's like you are able to see and observe and hold space literally. And that came from one of my biggest teachers. His name is Robert Augustus Masters. And I learned shadow work through his work, which is being at a space where you are observing your own judgments that are coming very often from your conditioning. You talked about the child that didn't have a phone. You talked about me, for example. I wasn't allowed to go to a party, before 14. I didn't have my first phone. I had my first phone. I was 16, I think. So when you are in these places where it triggers something that happened in your childhood, which is, oh, these children today, nowadays, these youngsters, they can do all of these things. But when I wanted to do that when I was younger, it was just a no. And that was hurtful. It was a hell no. It wasn't even a possibility. So there is a part of me that is feeling activated there because the luxury that they have today is something that I didn't have when I was younger.
And
you go ahead, please.
And I'm saying even as an American, I have been to other countries, seen people suffer. My wife has toured many war-torn, earthquake-torn, famine-torn nations, and I get angry, like, don't you see how lucky you are? We've got potholes, we have to fix them, but don't don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I realize it's because of my trauma-informed perspective.
That's absolutely right. It's like there is something in there that's like hitting you. There is way more to it. There is way more to just the judgment. And when you are able to hold space for the judgments and you don't take action from the judgments, then you are able to meet the other person more compassionately. And this is really the invitation here. It doesn't mean that you don't necessarily have preferences. I'm giving you an example of a judgment. Like all black men are this, behave like this, or do that. This is something that was preconceived, maybe even passed down to you. Or all women have this thing. This is usually ideas that are running among men. Well, all women are a little crazy. Or all women are this or this or this or that. And this is an opinion, something that was passed on to you, something that has been generalized and just packaged, been given to you, and it's present in your psyche somewhere. The brain has no erase button, meaning if a conditioning was given to you, that conditioning is still recorded somewhere in your consciousness, but you can act from that consciousness, or you can hold space for that and respond from a different perspective that is more centered, more aligned, more in alignment of who you truly know yourself to be, not just the conditioning that you received. So, in my experience, holding space for judgments that are really opinions, perspectives that we receive that are labeling other people is very important as a skill. If in my journey I approach a client from all the ideas, preconceived cultural ideas that I think I know about the profile of this person, I can't be fully a safe place for the person to help them heal. Does it mean that because I have these preconceived ideas that I'm a judgmental person? Not necessarily. In my opinion, being a judgmental person is taking action from all of that. It's taking action from all of these preconceived judgments that we have. But when you are able to really observe your judgments, observe what you have been passed on, and you stand in a place of curiosity. In my experience, curiosity is really underrated. Standing in a place of curiosity where you are really genuinely interested about this soul in front of you, this human being in front of you. In my experience, that dismantles judgment. It's like you give yourself permission to have an experience that is independent of what you think you know about where this person is coming from, what this person's looking like. And in my experience, this is really underrated today.
Yes. So when we talk about the trauma-informed perspective of, say, a young person who grew up affluent, you grew up,
Yes.
in our perspective, everyone got a trophy and they were helicopter parented, let's say. They were kept in a very safe environment.
Yeah.
When we see the behaviors now, in your opinion, is that their trauma-informed perspective, that they're rebelling against that? Or have we put them in such a state of fear by, with 9/11 and school shootings, and, do we hyper protect them to a point that now when they read the news or see what's going on, they're reacting, going crazy based on their traumas? Because I'm always trying to figure out what it is about some of the people out there protesting, and I know the ones who have experienced discrimination and all the other horrible things, fully understand that reaction. I don't understand, and I'm really trying to be less judgmental now based on this interview. I've had some psychologists explain it to me, but I never quite understood why someone who grew up with a lot of means and a lot of affluence, but then was hyper protected, why are they so angry and so triggered, and everyone is bullying them and everything is a toxic and they're a victim? And is it I think you can explain it better than me. I'm going to make my guesses based on what you've already taught me, but can you help me with that?
I can give a perspective, and I just
Please.
need to give this warning. It's on your perspective, and it might resonate with some people, it might not, and it might be accurate, it might also be extremely wrong. So, but this is the perspective that I have. And I see myself as a bridge in my work. I am fortunate enough to be able to work with many communities. Like I support like the Black community, indigenous communities, and also I find this ease of also being able to connect and work with other communities, white communities, Caucasian communities. So there are a few things that I see across the board. And the first thing that I would like to say is there has been a narrative that happened powerfully in the collective, and at least in the last year, since the racial incidents that happened in the States. It reactivated trauma within,
Hmm.
Black communities and stuff like
I
that. It reactivated
fully
powerfully
understand.
that.
Yes, that makes
And,
perfect sense.
and on the other side, there is a narrative that has been created. And this might get me a lot of fire for this, but I'm just going to say it out loud, which is white people are being told that without knowing it, that they are racist. And I challenge it. I challenge it. Like, of course, if you read the books and, the white privilege and all of that, I can see how people can end up to this kind of conclusions. But I'm asking you to put yourself in the shoes of a 10-year-old boy, or even a 20-year-old boy or white girl that grew up having Black friends and relating to them, have truly creating connection with them to a certain degree. And she is being told in this moment, or he is being told in this moment, that by association, he is an oppressor. Who would like to embody that label? I assume no one. So you are just telling a person here that without his knowing, he was hurting someone else, and that you are telling him that this big system has been working on oppressing his friends, and he wasn't aware of that. Of course, it creates anger.
Yeah.
Of course, it creates rage. Of course, there is that need of wanting to signal, no, I'm not like that. No, I want to be a loving person. Yes, I want to belong with you. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. So there has been a lot of that happening. And unfortunately, in my experience, there has been a lot of also white shaming happening, which is not how unity is created in my experience.
Yeah.
Shame is an instrument of divide.
Yes.
Shame is an instrument of division.
Yes.
We cannot create unity with an instrument that is meant to divide. And this is just what I'm seeing very loudly in the field right now. And I can fully stand and say, I love my Black folks, indigenous folks, Latino folks, and white folks. I can stand there and say, when we sit together, I can be fully with them in the pain that they're experiencing. And I know that shaming anyone has never brought healing.
No.
Individually, collectively, it has never brought healing. So
Wow.
we are witnessing a young generation where they, unfortunately, they are being bombarded with a lot of narratives, and there is an extreme level of confusion. And confuse somebody enough, shame someone enough, and um, put them enough in a place where they don't have clarity about what is actually happening. We look for belonging when we are lost. When we are lost, we look for belonging. And we look for the belonging in the places that are virtue signaling the most, because it feels safer over there.
Yeah, it does.
So,
It does.
in my experience, this is the reason why we see a lot of young folks that are just like, everything is toxic, everything is bad, everything is like maybe I'm over exaggerating here, but really that voice that is very loud. That being said, I am also fully in support of people that have had,
Yes, of course.
deep
Yep.
traumatic experiences due to race and due to all of that.
Yes.
And I'm not dismissing any of it by all means, but I'm just like, okay, putting the pendulum, completely shifting the pendulum on the other side, which is usually what happens. You're going to see somebody that has gone through something very, very abusive. There, and this is something that's very interesting. I'm going to share that here. Very often, when we have been abused, our expression, what power looks like, very often is was modeled by the abuser.
Yes.
What power looks like is what the abuser modeled. The abuser had power over us. And whether it's in narcissistic dynamics or just like abuse dynamics, this is just conditioning. And I'm not saying this to
No,
label
no.
anyone,
You're
but it's just
informing.
like I am modeled power through being abused
Yes. And we
in this
don't
moment.
want to be. We
Yeah.
should not want to be. So what I used as a technique, there was someone I grew up with, a narcissist, that did a lot of damage ensued from my relationship with this person. One of the few things that I did, I think, correctly, was to identify the things that this person did, and I would, as a leader, as a manager, as a human being, and I just remember saying, he was going to be my guide of the things I'm not going to do and not going to be. And I've said this to you, Kelsey, too, before, where I'm just like, oh no, that's what he would do.
Right.
I'm not doing that. And it actually,
Yes.
listen, and 2 decades later, I've been very successful, at least career-wise, and I think that really helped me to not want to. I actually learned that in an old Star Trek episode. There was a little person that they were going to inject and give him superpowers, and he said, no,
Yes.
because then I'll be like them. The people in power at that time in this fictional episode had these superpowers. And he's like, I don't want it because I'll be like them, which is why I love TV and movies, because the art really can inspire us to positive. That's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to look at it, is like, do we want to be like the Nazis in Germany? Do we
Absolutely
want to
not.
be like, what went on, in our country? Do we want to be like the villains? No, we don't want to be.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to take that path because that's an easy path,
Yeah.
and it feels good to give them back what they gave you. But
Absolutely.
ultimately, our show is called Better Together for a reason. I know in Hollywood, the best work I've ever done has been with people from all different backgrounds, races, and orientations. It is always, our best work has always been that way. And for Hollywood, all the hypocrisy and the toxicity behind the scenes, that has been my experience, is that we have done our best work. And I love this idea that shame divides us, because I've never been able to put it in that word. I just keep saying, you're dividing us. You're dividing us. Like, and what I'm hoping for is that maybe it's one of those things where we divide and then come back together when we heal. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm hoping in 5 or 10 years, the leaders like you are going to step up and say, guys, come on now. We're better together. Let's get back together. But shame is a divider. I will tell you, as a coach, and again, me of lower consciousness to you. So again, I know you're probably going to say I'm judging myself, but
okay.
it's okay. I know. But I would use a tactic called shame therapy, where I would remind somebody, over and over again of the mistakes they would make when they were making them again. And I would do it in a joking way. And I would even use that joke of shame therapy. But now that talking to you, I realize that it's not really worked. I mean, I know with my wife, it's like shame therapy. I do it with her. And you know what? 20 years later, she still does the same things. So, thank you for that gift as well for me. Shame has never brought healing. Oh my God, even when it's the intention. Before you go, Xavier, because I know I'm going to probably take you up on what I'm going to ask you to promote right now, but tell me about Integrate, your 12-week program, because I think Kelsey and I we're going to be signing up.
Oh, we're doing it.
But can you tell us about this? If you've listened to this show, the best way we can give back to Xavier. I mean, he just gave his heart, his soul. This is years worth of knowledge and much more of his life experience that he's basically just given to all of us, for free. He has, I'm hearing he has a child. He's got a family he has to support, and we need people like this to be able to have the means to continue. And the best way we can help him back is to, if we're in pain and we need help and we're of the means, to sign up for his services. And I know he does private life coaching, but I like this integrate 12-week group experience. I feel like this is like 3 months to a better you. I feel like this is self-contained. And out of all things I saw you doing, I don't know why this one just seemed the most quantifiable, spoke to me for people who just kind of want to get in there and make a big difference in a short amount of time.
I just want to take a second to thank you, first for having me here. And before even talking about the services and stuff, just, to thank you for the work that you're doing with this podcast, because this is what I needed, like personally, when I was feeling so isolated and I didn't know, where to find that help. Podcasts weren't so much of a thing back in 2012, 2013. Yeah. There were a few, but like what you are bringing here is so potent. It's so important for people. So I just want to acknowledge that and even say thank you for the fact that you're willing to promote my work. What I can say about Integrate, it is really a group coaching experience where we get to dive in deep. I've tried like some modalities that really didn't help me. Like I've tried to just like run away from what I was feeling within. It didn't work for me. And it was actually painful for quite a while to drag that emotional pain through my experience. And Integrate is a 12-week journey where I really dive in deeply with people. It's a small circle. Like I am fortunate enough to have a team that is working with me to provide the utmost level of safety so that people feel empowered to share their story truthfully. So we work with a very small group for 3 months. We have weekly group coaching calls and stuff like this, but this is not really the most important. The most important is the process that I bring people through, because we get to dive into all these dark places and we get to do serious shadow work, because the parts of us that we usually disown, they do not go away. They run the show usually in the back, in the shadow. And what I've seen in my own story is the more you are able to own and work through your shadows, the more you are able to take conscious leadership. And I often talk about this thing, leading from your heart and not leading from your wounds. For a long time in my life, I was leading my life from my wounds. I didn't have any relationships. Like I wouldn't allow any friendships. And that was leading from the fear of getting hurt again. And I knew that, but I was leading from that place. So what we do is first diving into childhood trauma and really working on shifting through inner child work. We also dive through the different archetypes that are usually running our lives. I'm talking about the pleaser or the prostitute archetype and how to shift from constant self-betrayal to get to a place where you are just looking at yourself with radical self-acceptance, like establishing a new degree of self-love within yourself. And the second part is really working on shifting deeply the child so that you can become a more sovereign adult, a more sovereign being where you can meet yourself and take responsibility for your needs and even take responsibility for your dreams to a certain degree, because very often that child within is the dreamer. That child within holds purpose. That child is is the part of you that is usually, you will see very often children, you ask them, what do you want to be as an adult? They are able to tap to that creative space, but we get through this illusion that when you grow up, you need to bury the child. And that's not true in my experience. When you grow up, you get to lead the child. And the child needs to trust that you, the adult that you have become, you are able to take responsibility for all these needs. And how to shift the victim consciousness and to get to a place where you are able to set boundaries, to get to a place where you are able to really be assertive and really get also to a place where you are, I want to say, alchemizing the saboteur within you, especially for people that are out there that would like to create something. Like I have been sabotaging this work that I'm doing now for years. And I was like receiving the impulse, I should be doing this. I should, get my training to be able to do this. And I was like, no, who am I to think I can do that? Or I need to know step one, step two, step three, step four, step 100 before I can take step one. I wasn't willing to surrender and to trust that I actually have something to offer. So, getting to a place where you learn to work a little bit more intuitively and to trust your own guidance is also something that we do. And integrate is a container where I really give people time to be seen in a circle that feels safe. Like, this is a place I really put a high value on safety because I know safety and connection are prerequisites for deep healing and integration and transformation.
And so how do
And
we
that,
sign up for this too? How do we sign up?
in order to sign up for it, there is we are starting in April.
Okay.
We opened the page on my website where people can apply for Integrate, and we are gonna start enrollment. Like the waitlist is open. There is a on my website, xavierdagba.com/integrate. There is all the information about this package, and people can, tune in for that waitlist there. We are beginning, next week. We are starting the enrollment process to get people signed up in Integrate. And the reason why we have that enrollment, that application is because I want to have people in the group that have already been kind of initiated to the work.
Yeah. Yep.
Very often, when people come and work with me and there is some sort of foundational work that is missing, I know they're not going to have the biggest experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I've run this program already in enough time to see if I can make sure, okay, this person is attuned to things like meditation or is attuned to like working or has this kind of background and this foundational work, I can bring them to a bigger experience, a bigger shift, a bigger transformation. So if anyone is really willing to dive in a way that they probably didn't experience before, I'm inviting them to go there, and I'm really confident about the transformation that they can experience.
XavierDagba.com. We will put a link in the YouTube page for the show as well as on the Apple Podcast page. We are going to speak to, well, I'm hopefully again you'll come back and talk to us. I think there's reparenting is an episode. I think there's one on shadow work. And yeah, I love what you're doing. And I know behind the scenes I'm going to champion you. And my wife, who created this show, because it really was her intention, she went through a brain tumor and went on a journey to do a lot of work on herself and learn a lot. And it just came back to her like, this is the show I want to do. I'll spend money. I'll put in all my time. I don't care. That's going to be my greater purpose than, no disrespect to being on the red carpet. She'll still do that when and if she's asked. But this is really what, so anyways, you credit me, you're crediting really her because this was her vision. I've been a facilitator, as is Kelsey. But thank you, Xavier. And I consider you such a friend now. And I can't wait to do more with you. And I can't wait to share you with the world. You're very special. Just please keep up the great work. And know we're always here for you too.
It's a deep honor, honestly. I'm getting shivers as you're speaking. And I wish I had the chance to speak with Maria because the work that you guys are doing is fantastic. And I hope she can hear that some way.
She will.
So thank you so much for just having me. And I am just humbled that I get the chance to share what I do with you guys and with all your listeners.
Thank you. As are we. And yeah, next time will be, I can't wait to get you with Maria. So thank you. Okay, Kelsey. So, and Better Together Heal Squad fans, that was part one of our incredible interview with Xavier Dagba. We didn't expect it to be a 2-part interview. I was having so many personal breakthroughs.
Me too.
I just couldn't stop. And at some point, I just said, well, if he's willing to let it go, which he, thank goodness, was. He was so gracious of his time. But there's much to process in just part one, Kelsey. And but hang on, because part two, there's just so many more tools that he offers and that are just so incredibly timely.
Yeah.
Were you moved, Kelsey, too?
Beyond.
Really?
You said it a couple times, but I've loved him for a minute, and just like you talk about how angels speak through certain people and use them as vessels. Like, holy cow, he is just touched, and
really?
he's such a light soul too. It's like he doesn't have a lot of people when they, I feel like, talk about this stuff. It's hard to understand them, or they're heavy, or they're this. He's just has a way.
He's very connected.
Yeah. So I'm excited for everyone to hear part two.
Well, please, you guys, continue to subscribe to our channel. We want to try to get our subscribers up from where they are at, and tell friends about us if you could too. And it's at Xavier Dagba, because he needs definitely some love. We got to send some love his way too.
And it's Xavier.Dagba.
Ah, very good.
But you guys will find him easily. Follow him. He drops gems daily.
And until then, what, Kelsey?
Be nice people, make good choices, and be present.